Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. So this is going to be the second part in the series on Usury. Now, when I made the first episode, which was called Christianity's Failure on Usury, I didn't understand how much content there was here and how much important stuff there was to cover. So then I altered it to a part one. Now, when I had first posted that video, after I had edited it, but before I had posted it, I realized that I said something incorrect in that episode, which will be linked in the description to this one. And I had said 1900 years that Christians had not done usury. That's incorrect. It was actually during the Reformation. So the early to mid 1500s where the Christians started backsliding on that, right? So basically, I want to talk today in the part two about Islamic banking and explain that, right? And it's just interesting to learn about. I'm not pushing it, but I'm saying there are some good things, some bad things. We want to look at it and see what it is. And I had no knowledge about this even when I filmed that last episode. So it's going to be very valuable, I think. And then tomorrow's episode, or Wednesday's episode, is going to be the third and last part in this series where we're going to talk about the effects of usury. It's going to be called Bankers, Enslaved Christians or something like that, because I haven't exactly figured that out. But basically, it's going to be about the effects of usury on Christian communities and the effects of usury on Jewish communities and how it varies drastically and provides advantages for one and disadvantages for the other. So basically, let's talk about Islamic banking, okay? There's two types of banking in the world today. There's Jewish banking, conventional banking, and then there's Islamic banking, okay? So we know kind of how our system works, the basics of it. Nobody knows the advanced stuff of it, maybe, but everybody knows the basics of it, right? And so we're going to compare and contrast the two and see how they operate in different situations. So let me tell you the short version of like an Islamic fable that explains their entire system, okay? I'm just going to give you the quick version. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not here to, drag this out, okay? So basically a father and son go camping together, right? And they come out of the tent and they get their food ready to be prepared because they're going to have friends over, and all of a sudden it rains on their food and everything's wet. Everything in the forest wet, everything, or wherever they live. And basically the friends arrive, but in Islamic culture, you got to offer them tea or coffee. So the father tells the son, go light a fire so we can heat some water for tea or coffee for our friends. So the son looks around everywhere and he can't find anything to kindle the fire. And then he remembers if he goes in the tent, there's a metal box, and in the metal box, the father has a bunch of money. So he takes the dry money, goes out back, starts a fire, heats the coffee and tea, brings it out. Father's super impressed. He says, wow, my son, he's so inventive. Look, I don't know how he pulled this off, but he did great, right? Moral of the story, is there a problem with the hot coffee and tea, which is the custom to serve to the friends? Or is there a problem with how that tea was heated, right? There's no inherent problem with the coffee and the tea. So in this situation, it's, can banks make a profit? And that's the hot coffee or tea. And how do they do it? Do they do it in a sinful or evil or immoral manner? Or do they do it in a moral, responsible manner? And so then that's what Islamic banking is trying to do in every aspect of their relationship with the customer, okay? So in Islamic banking, the banks are for-profit institutions. Nobody claims they're anything other than that. They're forbidden to charge interest. So here's how they do it. Let's take some different scenarios. Say you want to buy a house, okay? So you're in our system and you want to buy a house. Say it's a $500,000 house, just to use a nice round number. You have 20% down payment, $100,000. Now you need a loan for $400,000. Let's say the interest rate is 6%, which is kind of what it's at right around there right now. Like go back 6 years, it would be like 3%. Go back 1 year, it would be 7%. So it fluctuates. But say 6% fixed rate loan for a 30-year mortgage. Guess how much money and interest you're going to pay over that 30-year term? You got any ideas? Just guess. Okay, the answer is $436,000 in interest on a $400,000 loan. So you're going to pay $836,000 total, okay? Now, if you we'll go back to part one of this series, Christianity is trying to say that the banker who gives you the 6% loan and charges you more than 100% interest total over the 30-year period on the loan is not charging exorbitant interest and therefore is not in a state of unrepentant sin. False. Because even if you're not a Christian, you have to say that's evil and immoral. It's terrible, right? Now let's look at how that exact same scenario would go in Islamic banking, okay? In Islamic banking, you would want to buy the $500,000 house and the house would cost you $60,000. But we're going to talk about that later. Because without having inflation in their system, their house is not going to cost $500,000. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the pros and cons. But let's just pretend the house in Islamic banking is $500,000. You have $100,000. You go to the bank. You come to an agreement. And what's going to happen in this situation, you're going to give the $100,000 to the bank. The bank's going to put in $400,000 by that bank. The bank's going to own it. And the bank is going to then sell it to you, right? So your partnerships with the bank, and they're going to add a slight profit on it for them. Now, I don't know what the slight profit is, but you can assume that it's going to be under $436,000 of profit, because that's not a slight profit. That's exorbitant loan sharking like levels of usury, right? So I don't know what the exact figure falls in, but they're in this relationship with you, and their goal is not to just rob you. So in Islamic banking, all money has to be tied to an asset, because when money's just floating around making money, that's usury, and so it has to be tied to an asset. So you can also get into a situation where the bank will lease you the house. So imagine you're in a situation where you lose your job and this and that, and all of a sudden you can't afford to buy the house. You could then lease it for, say, 6 months at a lesser rate, then resume the buying after 6 months, because you're in this partnership with the bank, right? They try to do more of a natural, organic type banking, where the bank is closely tied to the community and invested in the community, not trying to Jew the community. Do you know what I'm saying? And you could use that multiple different ways right there. Okay, so let's talk about another type of loan. Say you want to put money in the bank, and then you want to accrue interest on that money. Well, you can't do that in Islamic banking, because interest is usury, right? So what you do is, first you look around at banks, because all the banks have a reputation. You find a very good bank with a very good track record, right? You put your money in the bank. Say you put $10,000 in the bank, whatever. And then the bank then has these different projects going on, because remember, all the money has to be tied into real assets, real things in the world, right? So say over here, they're developing an apartment complex. Over here, they bought a house that's just completely run down. They're renovating this and that. They're going to sell it at a profit, right? Well, when they finish their apartment complex, that's going to go to a profit. So they put your $10,000 and they push it towards one of those projects, right? If that project is successful, then you get money back in addition to your $10,000 by way of profit sharing. But because your money is tied into an asset, it's not a guaranteed. So if you put money in the bank and it's under $250,000 in our system, because it's FDIC insured, you're guaranteed to get your money back with interest. You're guaranteed to. In their system, you're tying your money into the success or failure of the bank, and they have a track record of whether or not they're good or bad at what they do. So you want to pick a good bank. And then if they succeed, you succeed and you gain more money, but not through usury, through profit sharing, because you're in a partnership with the bank, right? If they lose money, then you lose money and you have less than $10,000, right? So basically, okay, let's talk about another thing you want to do. Say you want to get a business loan, okay? Say you own a restaurant, okay? And you make X amount of profit per year. You've had this restaurant for 15 years. You're very successful, just part of the community, you know? And you say, okay, well, if I had a $50,000 loan, I could increase the amount of oven hardware I have, and therefore expand my menu. I could build a patio overhang out here. I could add more seating. Therefore, I could, host more people. And you do this whole business plan. You take it to the bank, and you say, look, if I had $50,000 to invest in my company, I think I could raise profits by 40%. Okay, so then the bank looks at your whole setup and your business plan and stuff like that, and sees whether or not that'll be successful. Say they make a deal with you that says, okay, we'll loan you that, but during the term that you're paying back the loan, say it's 4 years. We'll just say you pay back $12,500 a year. We'll just say during that 4 years, we want 20% of the profits in excess of the 100% profits that you normally make. So of that 40% projected increased profits, they want 20% of that, which is 8%. You know what I mean? 8% of everything above 100%, right? So if you take the loan, and then over the course of that 4 years, you never make over the original 100% profit that you normally had, that normal number, say the number's $2,000 a night or whatever it is. If you don't make over that, then you don't have to pay them back any extra money in addition to the $12,500 a year or the $50,000 over 4 years, right? But if you do make the projected 40% over, so then what would that be? That would be $800 over. So you'd be projecting that you would make, instead of $2,000 a night, you would make $2,800 a night. Well, of that $800 that you got over the $2,000, you would need to give them 20% of that. So you're giving them $160 a night of the additional profits, in addition to paying back the $50,000, right? So they're investing in you. Now imagine what this would look like in society. Like, say that bank does the deal with you, and then they're like, hey, but next month we're doing our 25th anniversary party where we're going to have, maybe catering at our office, or maybe we're going to invite all the executives out, right? Why not take them to your restaurant? Why not pack it out for lunch on midday when you're not normally open and schedule that with you so you can increase the profits of this restaurant that you're already invested in, because you're going to get 20% of the profits above the $2,000 a night normally that they normally get, you know? Why not take your wife there extra times instead of the opposing restaurant, because the bank's invested in them. So you see how the bank's tied into the community in natural ways, and they're always investing in their assets, okay? So that's kind of how it works, right? And now let's talk about the pros and cons of conventional banking versus Islamic banking, okay? So one of the pros of, okay, here's the con of Islamic banking. Because all the money's tied into assets, it's not being leveraged at massive paces. Because it's not being leveraged at massive paces, the economy can't grow into a bubble. It just can't. So the economy slowly grows because the money's tied into that apartment complex. It's tied into that business, you know, and you're waiting for the returns. And so it's kind of natural and slowly it grows, right? So that's the con, is that the money doesn't move as fast. It's not leveraged as fast. The pro is you don't have all this leveraging of money, which creates all this inflation. That just doesn't exist, right? And so when you look at the conventional system, the pro is that the economy can build really fast, but the con is the inflation, you know? So when we looked at the houses at the beginning, the homes at the beginning, and you were trying to loan that home, in reality, if we were actually comparing apples and apples, we would be like, hey, or apples and oranges, I don't know how you say that. Anyways, you would actually be looking at, well, what's the loan in a conventional system for a $500,000 house, and what's the loan in Islamic banking for a $60,000 house, because they wouldn't have all the inflation that racks everything up. And you could just look at how there's some weird metrics I use to chart inflation in our conventional system, right? They're silly, right? But one of them is Arby's burgers, right? Late 90s, it was 5 for $5. Then it was 5 for $5.55. Then it was 4 for $5. And look at where they're at now on that, you know? You could get 2 for $7 on the classics. Now, sometimes you can get the classic with cheddar or whatever, you know, for 2 for $7. Sometimes you can't, you know, but just try to calculate those inflations. There's a what is it, gas station truck stop or something that I like to order. You know, I like their pizza at it, right? They made this new recipe, this and that. In 2019, it was 2 slices for $5. Then it was 2 slices for $6, 2 slices for $7, 2 slices for $8. Right now it's 2 slices for $8. There's one, well, it was by my old place. I don't really go there anymore, but it was right down the hill from my old place that I used to live at. But you look at the difference so we're talking 2019 to 2025. So we're talking 6 years. It went from two for $5 to 2 for $8. That's a 60% increase in the price of the thing. Have my wages gone up 60%? Right? I would say between 2019 and 2025, my wages have gone up 20%. So what's gonna fill that gap? You know? And so that's the negative with the conventional system. Is that sure, it looks good on paper and our market skyrockets and all this stuff, but the inflationary pressure is so high that the individuals get crushed under it when it just costs so much more at the store, We had like a 20% consumer price index in the last 4 years or something like that. It's insane, you know? Anyways, so I think it's interesting comparing and contrasting the two to see that there is a different way. Kind of in that first episode, I was like, I just don't care about the bankers, you know, and I don't care. We can create a new financial system, but there's other ways to do it. And Islamic banking has found ways to do it without. So they still get the hot coffee. So the bank still makes the profit if the business is successful, right? If, you know what I mean, under conditions, because it's all the bank's tied into, they want you to win so that they win. So they still get profit if they're successful, but they heat the coffee different ways, you know? And the way it's done in our system is a truly evil system. But it's also in our system, the bank is completely divorced from so they look at your business plan and then they rent you the money. They lend you the money, you know, like say, for example, in our system. And then all they care about is the money, because the business is just collateral, right? It doesn't matter to them, because either you pay the money with interest or they grab the business as collateral. Say you use the business as collateral. But in their system, they're invested in your in your success. So I don't know exactly, but I can see that in our system, you could hate the bank. You could hate your own bank, the one that you need to go to for the loan to buy the house, but you still hate them. But in their system, they could love their banks. They could invite their bankers out because their bankers just hooked them up with that loan and they gave them the low percentage on the profits, we'll say, you know, for the restaurant example. And and they loved it. They brought their company party there. And then the guy just brought his wife and kids there the other night and tipped 20% or whatever. I don't know if they tip, but I'm just saying, you know, because you're invested in the community. So you end up loving your bankers. Like imagine that scenario. It's a wild scenario to think about coming from this system, you know? Anyways, that's what I got for you. Wednesday, we're going to do the third and last part on this. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do that. And then on Thursday, we're doing another episode with Garen. And we're going to look at another one of these kingdoms, ancient Jewish kingdoms. And we'll see you next time.